Good morning, everyone. How are you? I'm Rob Gardner. I'm the co-founder of Rebalance Earth, and I'm here to talk about how you can use your money as a force for good. So look, my background is I'm an author, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm an investor. So I've written 2 books. I've written a children's book called Save Your Acorns, and 3 months ago, I published a book called Freedom: How to Earn It, Keep It, and Grow It. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded 3 businesses. I'm now on my 3rd startup, Rebalance Earth, whose goal is to create a world worth living in by enabling the flow of private capital to protect and restore nature at scale. And so what I wanted to do is talk about 2 parts, really, about how to use money to achieve your goals, whilst at the same time thinking about how your money can be used as a force for good. But I think it's really important to get the first bit right. And so in this book, I talk about how to achieve financial freedom. And you need to get 3 things right. You need to earn it, you need to keep it, and you need to grow it. And actually, if we get those 3 things right, we can make a dramatic impact. And if I was to summarize the entire book, 18 chapters, 45,000 words, there's really 3 things to take away. One is be like Amundsen, and that's really the Amundsen versus Scott in the race to the South Pole was really about having a plan to get there. So first and foremost, when it comes to your personal finances, have a plan. The second thing is pound cost averaging, how you invest your money on a regular basis. I'm sure many of you already invest in your ISAs and your pensions on a monthly basis, but a little bit every day or every month or every year is absolutely key. The second thing is be like Joseph. If you remember Joseph from the Bible, or maybe you've been to see the musical, he advises Pharaoh about how to deal with the 7 cows and the 7 sheaves of corn, or the 7 years, and he says, look, what you need to do is save 20%, 1/5 of what you have, and effectively put it away for a rainy day. So be like Joseph, and I'm sure many of you in the room are already doing this. And then thirdly, when it comes to growing your money, you need to be like Ulysses, and the analogy there is that when it comes to investing, it is scary, it is volatile, the bad news is all around us, and it's easy to panic. And Ulysses wanted to see the sirens, and the sirens would then lure the sailors into the sea. And so what he did is he tied his arms behind the mast, he put beeswax in his ears so he could sail past and not just be distracted by Ulysses. And I think these are the fundamental principles when it comes to being a long-term investor. But before I go any further, I wanted to get a fresh perspective because I think it's always interesting to think into the future. So if you could please welcome my daughter, Tara Gardner, on stage, that'd be great.
Hi everyone. It's a bit nerve-wracking being in front of all of you, but it's also really exciting.
Well, lovely to be on stage with you. Can you introduce who you are?
Sure. I'm Tara. I'm 9 years old. I go to a school near Kew Gardens, and I love drama.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first one is I'm going to give you this magic penny. Now, this magic penny doubles in value every day. So tomorrow it'll be worth 2p, and then it'll be worth 4p, and then it'll be worth 8p. So what are you going to do with that magic penny?
Keep it secret. Maybe hide it under my pillow.
Okay, brilliant. And let's imagine you leave it for a while and it grows and grows and grows. Do you think you'll spend it? And if so, what would you spend it on?
Yes, I would buy an iPad and a VR headset. Maybe 2, so I could share it with my friends.
Well, your friends are very lucky. Now, I've got something I want to set up, and I'm going to ask the audience. So you've got 2 options. I could give you £10,000 every day for a month. So 10,000, then 20,000, then 30,000. So that's option 1. Or option 2 is you can have this magic penny for a month. So raise your hands if you want option 1, £10,000 for a month. Anyone want that? Just a handful of you. Okay, and who will go for option 2, the magic penny? Well, given that this is a personal finance conference, it's good to see more shows of hands for that. Which one would you go for, Tara?
I'll go for the magic penny, because it gets bigger and bigger every day, but the £10,000 stays the same.
Absolutely right, Tara. That is the magic of compound interest.
It's like when you have a little plant and you water it every day and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's a really big plant.
That's a beautiful analogy. So, okay, my second question, I want us to fast forward to 2050. How old will I be and what will I look like?
You'll be old.
Oh no, that's not good.
You'll have curly white hair, a mustache, and a monocle, because why not?
I'm not sure I like that description, but we'll run with it. And how old will you be, and what will you look like?
I'll be half your age, but twice as cool.
So that's a very sassy answer. Now, it's 2050. You've kept hold of that magic penny. It is now worth more money than everything else in the world. And it means you can basically wish for whatever you want. So if you had one wish, what would it be?
I wish for the planet to be cleaner and greener.
That is the perfect answer for the rest of my presentation. Can we have a round of applause for Tara, please? Thank you very much. And you're letting me have the magic penny. That's a mistake. So you all got the right answer, but if you had that magic penny, after 10 days, your £10,000 would be worth £100,000, and yet your magic penny will be worth just £5. After 20 days, you've now got £200,000, and your magic penny is only worth about £5,000. It takes 26 days for the magic penny to catch up with the £10,000 a day. So by then you've had £260,000, and it's £335,000. And if the magic penny keeps on growing and doubling every month, it's worth over £10 million after 31 days. So that is the magic of compound interest, and that is why it's so important to be a personal investor. And when it comes to building our wealth, there are two things we need to know. One, the magic of compound interest, and two, the importance of time. Now, of course, we can't get a magic penny that doubles every day, but if we can double our investments every decade, we can have a huge impact. And Warren Buffett is often held out as one of the greatest investors of all time. The main reason he's been so successful is he understood these two things, compound interest and time, and used them to his advantage. And as individual investors, we all need to put ourselves in the position to maximize our wealth. So that was really part one. How do I get my own financial circumstances in place to look after my wealth? The second thing is, as you start to build this pot of money, you can have a really big impact. And I want you to think about how your money can be a force for good. And so some research was done by Nordea that shows that where and how we invest our money is 27 times more impactful than if we fly less, eat less red meat, and cycle to work. So the point being is the impact that we have of how we invest our money is disproportionate as when it's compared to how we spend our money and the choices that we make. Now, clearly, we should be doing both of those things if we want to kind of create a world worth living in. And the reason why this works is because when you invest your money, chances are you work with a workplace pension or you have a private pension. That money will accumulate up, and those investors will typically be investing billions and billions of pounds, and they'll be investing across thousands of companies around the world. And what happens is that these companies are impacted by the world. So think about the storms that are happening or the fires. When these things happen, they disrupt the supply chain. Even the mighty Apple put out a report saying just how exposed it is to climate change on its supply chain. And at the same time, companies can have a negative impact on the planet. And so when you invest your money, you want to be making sure that those fund managers who are investing on your behalf are engaging with those companies to do something about it. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the term ESG, environment, social, and governance. That's really about asking the tough questions. But the letter that I really want you to take away is F, and that's for financial disclosure, because it's fair to say that really we've been focused on profit and loss, and we've not really, ESG is a nice to have, it's a second cousin to P&L and balance sheet. But what financial disclosure does is it uses this concept called double materiality, which forces you to understand how does climate change impact your business, and how does your business impact climate change, and or how does your business, is it dependent on nature, or do you have a negative impact on nature? And until that connection is made financially, we won't start to see behavior. But TCFD has been going for a couple of years now, and TNF Day literally just got launched about 3 weeks ago. So that's the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. The key thing, though, is we need to fundamentally change our environmental footprint on the planet. You've probably heard about the idea of the Earth Day, like how many days it takes before we've consumed one whole Earth. So all of the food that we take from Earth, all of the water, all of the plastic we throw in the oceans. Globally, it's about 1.6. In the UK, we consume sort of like probably 2.5 times. Unfortunately, in America, it's a lot more. So the fundamental thing we need to do is significantly lower the environmental impact we have on the planet. And that means shifting from a take, make, waste economy that we've all grown up with over the last 50 years to a circular economy where businesses start by thinking about how can we reuse things, how can we remake them. A great example of this is if you saw the launch of the new Apple products, Mother Nature visits Tim Cook, and they talk very proudly about how their new Apple Watch is embracing this circular economy. Now, we've just started, and we need to do a whole lot more. Now, why is this important? Because globally, we face two risks, twin risks, the risks of climate change, but probably the one you're probably less aware of is the loss of nature, the degradation of nature, nature as a capital asset, and just how dependent we are. So I want to spend the rest of the talk explaining both the risks and opportunities that exist. But the cool thing is, if we're able to protect and restore nature, nature can have a dramatic impact on solving climate change. And the goal here is how can we rebalance the way we think about extracting from our planet, reinvesting in nature as a service, and having a healthy, prosperous economy that we can all thrive on. So what I want to do is connect that loss of nature to financial impact, because I think we've probably all watched David Attenborough, we've probably all watched Wild Isles, and it makes us feel sad to see animals dying or going extinct. But what does this mean in pounds and pence? So Tony Juniper said this: did you know that pollinating bees and insects are worth over £700 million to UK farming alone? And UK farming is a £130 billion industry. Now, in China, in parts of China, they've lost all of their bees and insects. And and they hand pollinate the plants now. If we had to hand pollinate, it would cost us £1.8 billion. So that's the financial disclosure. How are we dependent on nature? And how have we got here? Because it wasn't that long ago where everything was in harmony. We had population, we had economy, and we had nature. In fact, our economy was based on nature. It was really the Industrial Revolution that accelerated about 50 years ago, which has meant we've been hugely successful. So from 1970 to today, the population of the planet has grown from 3.5 billion to 8 billion. The global economy has grown from 20 trillion to about $100 trillion. And in fact, the global market capitalization of equities has grown from about 1 trillion to 100 trillion. So we should pat ourselves on the back. We've created population growth, we're living longer, we've created economic prosperity, but we've done it at the expense and degradation of nature. We've lost 70% of all of our animals on the planet. And so the success is, how do we rebalance to a world where we continue to have population growth, probably not at the same extent that we've had. Hopefully we start to level off as we get to £10 billion. We grow the economy, probably not at the same rate of growth that we've been at. And we start to restore nature. We'll never get nature back to the same level it was at a pre-industrial level with 8, 9, 10 billion people living on the planet. But we need more nature, not just because it's nice to have, but because it's essential for us to thrive. So we need to shift the balance. Our core view at Rebalance Earth is, if we valued nature the way we value properties, this hotel, companies, it is the most valuable asset class on the planet. In fact, research shows that the ecosystem services that we derive from nature, clean air, clean water, pollination, drought protection, flood protection, is worth $140 trillion. That's about 1.5 times the global economy. Effectively, for the last 3.5 billion years, we've been on a freemium service of nature as a service. And now, going forward, we're going to have to start paying for the benefits that nature gives us. And we are really exposed. PwC and the World Economic Forum did a report earlier this year that shows that 55%, $58 trillion of our global economy is highly and materially exposed to the loss of nature. And this is at a time where we've lost 70% of our living planet in the form of our animals, our flora and fauna. And here in the UK, we're one of the worst. The Biodiversity Intactness Index from the Natural History Museum shows that the UK is in the bottom 10% of the countries when it comes to the health of nature. At the same time, S&P Global have said that 85% of the largest companies in the world are highly dependent on nature. By the way, most of these companies haven't really thought about it, haven't done the homework to understand this. And in fact, just over the summer, the head of the ECB, the European Central Bank, analyzed the 4.2 trillion euros of loans that sit on our European bank balance sheets. And again, they came up with a similar number. 75% of all of those bank loans are materially or highly exposed to nature and nature loss. So how did we get here? Well, because what's happened is we've had this capitalist system which has been focused on profit. It's been focused on balance sheet. We have financial incentives that mean that if I'm the CEO or I'm the CFO, I get paid to manage these things on your right. But we've not accounted for carbon dioxide. We've not accounted for habitat loss. We've not accounted for the billions and gigatons of plastic that we dump every year into our oceans. And so what TCFD and TNFD means is those unaccounted for negative externalities are going to be imported and be intrinsically part of the health of those companies going forward, and that will change the way investors think about those businesses. And so what TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but really what it does is it says, we've got a company, think about your revenues into the future. There's probably an Excel sheet that projects the revenues out for the next 5 years and 10 years. And ask yourself, how dependent are those revenues on nature? What impact, when we generate those revenues from our supply chain, do we have? What is the opportunity to invest in nature to make our business more sustainable? And what do the risks represent? And let's think about it in the biomes that exist. So our impact on atmosphere, on land, on fresh water, on ocean, and on, of course, us people. We mustn't forget people. And William Mitchell, who I met the other day, said this: unless we redirect the flows of finance, we risk funding our own demise, endorsing an extinction not just of species, but of economic viability and human potential. William works at Deloitte, but actually his father is Andrew Mitchell, the founder of Global Canopy, who's doing an amazing work at trying to stop global deforestation. So what I wanted to do was just give you 3 examples of how nature loss impacts these businesses. So Arrowhead used to be a subsidiary of Nestle, has been drawing water in California, paying $2,000 a year, taking out about 55 million gallons of water a year, in a space where the people of California are drought-stricken, and that water is meaning that the biodiversity in that area is being stripped. People have engaged with Nestle. Actually, Nestle sold that business, and it's now owned by a private equity business. That business is about 100 years old, but you've got to ask yourself, how sustainable is it to get away with paying $2,000 to extract 55 million gallons of water at the expense of people who live around there? The second example I want to give you is Ruinart Champagne. Now, Ruinart Champagne don't need TNFD. They're the oldest champagne house in the world. They understand intrinsically and intimately they're connected to the soil, the atmosphere, and nature. And they've been studying, they've got records going back 300 years, but between 1960 and 1990, and 1990 to today, temperatures have gone up 1.2 degrees C. This means they have to harvest their grapes 2 weeks earlier every year. And if you know about champagne and brut champagne, right at the end of the process, you have to put sugar in to balance the acidity. The grapes are so ripe now that they no longer need to put sugar into brut champagne. So brut champagne will no longer need sugar. The outlook for them is sad because probably in the next 50 years or 100 years, champagne won't be possible to grow in the Champagne region. The UK is benefiting already. For those of you who like English sparkling wine, it's superb. But that is because climate change is shifting where we can grow champagne. And finally, Tesla. Tesla just opened up one of the biggest factories here in Europe, in Berlin, Brandenburg. They want to make a million Teslas a year. I think it's got capacity to make 2 million Teslas a year. But where they built the factory was already water depleted. This factory needs water, and they're drawing on the water. And the people who live there say, we will not accept that you will draw our water and further expose us for this factory. And again, investors are beginning to engage with Tesla and saying, well, how much water are you drawing down? What negative impact are you having on the environment around you? Now, all of this happens with the boring stuff. Companies have to disclose stuff. So companies produce their annual report and accounts. And what the financial disclosure of climate change did force people to do it to the same level. And this is beginning to happen right now for biodiversity and nature. So AXA was one of the first companies to do a joint report. Iberdrola, which is a Spanish company, also did one, and UBS. So companies are just beginning to report on these risks. But this is really important. The transition I want you to take away, this is probably the most important slide, is two things are going to happen. We've got this concept called greening finance, which is businesses, CEOs, CFOs are beginning to understand that they cannot get away with generating revenues and profits without internalizing those negative externalities. So that greening finance pulls all of those negative externalities onto their balance sheet and gets them to think about how quickly can I embrace the circular economy and reduce my impact. The second thing is it says, well, where I can't completely change things, where can I start to invest in nature? And this is what I call financing green, paying for nature to do the stuff that we depend on, paying for ecosystem services. So when it comes from an investor perspective, a couple of things are happening. Most of us in this room probably invest our money in ISAs and pensions and maybe some EIS and VCT, and then separately we have a pot of money for charity. We probably give money to WWF or to RSPB. But actually, if we're going to solve this problem, philanthropy isn't enough. And what's happening is our capital, our pensions, and our investments are shifting. They're saying, we don't just want to make a positive rate of return. We need to make sure it does no harm. That's been happening for the last decade. But people are going further. We want it to have an impact. We want it to change this. And it's that upside potential, that ability to invest in nature that has a massive impact. So Aviva has committed £100 million to invest in nature here in the UK. They've been investing in salt marsh restoration. But I wanted to bring it to life. An asset class that you probably didn't think you'd hear about this morning is seagrass. Now, when we invest in an asset, we normally want three things. We want utility, we want cash flow, and we want scarcity, whether we're buying a property or an equity. It turns out that seagrass has amazing utility. It absorbs carbon 35 times faster than tropical rainforest. Each hectare of seagrass supports 80,000 fish and over a million invertebrates, which is the key of the food web. It cleans the water and it protects us from flood protection. Who doesn't want that? That sounds like a pretty amazing utility. The second thing is that we can start to get paid for those. People like Salesforce are making commitments. Other businesses are making these kind of nature positive and climate positive ones. So they're starting to pay for nature as a service. But in the UK, our fishing industry has collapsed because it goes back to the scarcity point. We used to have 80,000 hectares of seagrass. We've got now only 8,000, so we don't have enough fish. So actually restoring our seagrass means there's more nurseries for fish, and we can start to increase the amount of sustainable fishing we do in the UK, increasing the jobs. So there is a benefit from everyone. And that's just one example of investing in nature. Actually, you don't want to invest in seagrass. You want to zoom out and invest in a place-based approach, because actually it's all interconnected. Because we're working on a project down in Plymouth Sound. If you invest in the seagrass, it doesn't work because our rivers are so dirty. The River Plym and Yelm are so dirty. So you need to go up and you need to fix the river, those two rivers. And then in order to do that, we also need to change the way that farmers use the land. So you need to take a place-based approach to solve all of these problems. But this is potentially a £100 million opportunity to change the way we think about nature, significantly reduce drought risk, flood risk, improve insects, improve the soil quality, capture more carbon, and just create a beautiful place for us to live and walk. It's an entire reframing of the way we think about nature and the role it plays in our economy and society. So these are an example of just some of the connected ecosystems that we can invest in as an asset class when it comes to investing in nature. So where does it fit in your portfolio? Right now, the returns on venture capital, it's probably around, let's say, 7 to 9%. But the opportunity, if policy changes, if demand changes over the next 10 years, is to have significant upside from investing in nature. So look, I just want to finish on this note. Thank you very much for your time. I want to go back to your own personal money, how you use your money, where you earn it, the company you work for, where you keep it, the banks you bank with, and crucially, how you invest your money and how you grow your money has a dramatic impact. So thank you very much for listening this morning. Have a great day.